We were so excited to move into our first home. It was old and full of character, and we never imagined that character came from a terrifying secret hidden inside its walls, a secret that was just waiting for someone to find it. My partner, Anna, and I had spent years saving up, dreaming of getting away from the city, of finding a place with history etched into its very bones. We found it in Oak Haven, a quiet, almost forgotten town that always seemed to be draped in mist. The house was a 2-story Victorian, exactly what we wanted. It had a wraparound porch, a yard big enough for a garden, and windows that looked out over the woods. It was perfect, or so we thought. The truth is, some secrets aren't meant to be found, and some houses are hungry. This isn't just a ghost story, it's a warning. It's what happens when you peel back the wallpaper of quiet life and find an abyss staring back. The first few weeks were a blur of unpacking and painting. We were just drunk on the smell of fresh paint and the sheer novelty of owning more than 800 square feet. Of course, the house had its quirks. Old houses always do. At least, that's what we told ourselves. There was this persistent, nagging chill in the second-floor hallway that just wouldn't go away, even on the warmest days. You could walk out of our sun-drenched bedroom and right into a pocket of air, so cold it felt like stepping into a meat locker. The inspector had mentioned something about poor insulation, so we chalked it up to that. An easy weekend fix. Then there were the smells. Faint scents that came from nowhere. Sometimes it was a cloying sweetness of dying flowers. Other times it was a damp, earthy smell of a cellar. Even when we were upstairs, Anna, ever the pragmatist, blamed the old plumbing. "It's just settling into its new owners," she'd say with a smile, and I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the most unsettling thing was a feeling. That quiet, constant pressure at the edge of your senses, like you're being watched. You'd be alone in the living room, and the hairs on your arms would just stand up. You'd turn, expecting to see Anna in the doorway, but there'd be nothing but empty space. It happened to both of us, but for the first month, neither of us said a word. It was our first shared secret in the new house, one we were both too afraid to acknowledge, afraid we'd make it real. The town of Oak Haven itself was reserved. Our neighbors were polite, but kept their distance. A tight-lipped smile here, a nod there, but no one ever stopped to chat. No welcome to the neighborhood casserole. When we mentioned our address at the local hardware store, the clerk's cheerful face would cloud over for just a second. "Oh, the old Blackwood place," he'd say, forcing a smile. "She's a beauty." There was always a pause after, a silence heavy with things left unsaid. We were outsiders, and it seemed the town, and maybe even our new house, wanted to keep it that way. We tried to ignore it all. We planted hydrangeas, picked out a new rug, and even threw a housewarming party, a desperate attempt to fill the silence with our own life. For one night, it worked. The house felt like ours, warm and full of laughter. But as the last car pulled away, the chill crept back in. It felt resentful, like it had been waiting for the intruders to leave. That night, I stared at the ceiling and couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't homeowners. We were just guests, and our lease was about to run out. The quiet unease we'd been living with started getting louder about 2 months in. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It started with my book. I'm a creature of habit. I always leave my book face down on the nightstand to mark my page. One morning, I woke up and found on the floor, closed, about 20 pages flipped back. I asked Anna if she'd moved it. She just gave me that concerned look, the one that says she thinks I'm not sleeping enough. "No," she said. "Why would I?" I let it go. Maybe I'd knocked it off myself. But then, a few days later, Anna's favorite mug was sitting perfectly centered on the kitchen table. Then my car keys, which always live on a hook by the door, showed up on the fireplace mantel. Each incident was small enough to deny, but they were adding up, creating this pattern of quiet, deliberate mischief. It was less like a haunting, and more like living with a passive-aggressive roommate. The real turning point was the scratching. It started so faintly I thought I was imagining it. Lying in bed, in that deep pre-dawn silence, I'd hear it, A faint, dry scrabbling sound. Scritch, scritch, scritch. It sounded like a mouse trapped somewhere. But the sound wasn't coming from the attic or the floor. It sounded like it was coming from inside the walls of our home office. "It's just pests," Anna said, her voice muffled by her pillow. "It's an old house in the woods. Call an exterminator." So I did. A man named Dave came out, inspected every inch of the house, and laid some traps. He shook his head. "Can't find a single point of entry," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "No droppings, no nests. This house is sealed up tighter than a drum." He left, and that night, the scratching was louder, more insistent. Scritch, scratch, scritch. It was frantic, desperate. The sound of something trying to get out, or maybe trying to get in. That's when we had our first real fight about it. I was standing in the office, my ear pressed to the floral wallpaper. Anna stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. "You're obsessing," she said, her voice strained. "It's the pipes. It's the house settling. It's anything but what you think it is." "And what do I think it is?" I shot back. "You think it's a ghost," she whispered, as if saying it out loud would make it true. "And it's scaring me. Your obsession is scaring me." I wanted to back down, to comfort her, to pretend I wasn't scared, too. But the sound was right there with us, a dry, rhythmic scraping that seemed to mock our argument. I knew then I couldn't ignore it anymore. Whatever was making that noise, it wasn't an animal or the pipes. It was something else. And it wanted our attention. The fight with Anna solved nothing. An uneasy truce fell over the house, thick and suffocating. We just stopped talking about it. The chill, the moving objects, the sounds. But the silence only made the scratching seem louder. It started to follow me, echoing faintly from other walls in the house, always there just beneath the surface. My obsession, as Anna called it, took over while she was at work. I became a detective in my own home. I started tapping on the walls, feeling like an idiot from a movie, but in the office, right where the scratching was loudest, the sound was different. It wasn't a solid thud. It was a hollow, resonant thump. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tapped again. Thump, thump, thump. A section of wall about 3 feet wide. I ran my hands over the wallpaper, feeling for a seam or a latch, but the pattern was seamless. It looked just like the rest of the wall, but it felt different. A faint vibration, a coolness that had nothing to do with the hallway chill. My eyes drifted to the floor, under the desk. I noticed the first time that one of the old oak floorboards didn't sit quite flush. It was a tiny imperfection, but in my hyper-aware state, it screamed at me. I knelt down and managed to get my fingernails under the edge. It resisted, then gave way with a low groan. It wasn't just one board, but a small section that had been cut out. My breath hitched. Underneath wasn't the subfloor, but a dark, rectangular hole, a hidden space. A smell of dust and dry paper rose from the cavity. My hand trembled as I switched on my phone's flashlight. The beam revealed a small compartment, about 2 feet deep. Inside, nestled on the joist, was a package wrapped in oilcloth and tied with twine. I lifted it out. It was heavier than it looked. This was it. This was the source of it all. I sat there on the floor, staring at it. Part of me, the rational part that sounded a lot like Anna, screamed at me to put it back, nail the floor down, and pretend this never happened. But I couldn't. The house had chosen us. The scratching wasn't something trying to get out. It was a summons. With trembling fingers, I untied the twine. It crumbled in my hands. I unfolded the oilcloth and found 4 leather-bound journals. On the inside cover of the first, a name was written in elegant, looping cursive, Evelyn Blackwood, and a date, June 1953. Blackwood, the name from the hardware store, the old Blackwood place. This wasn't just some diary. This was the house's memory, and I was about to read it. I waited until Anna was asleep. I couldn't bring her into this yet. Not until I knew what we were dealing with. I took the first journal, dated 1953, into the living room. For now, don't forget to subscribe, because this journey is just beginning, and what I found in these journals changed everything. Evelyn Blackwood's early entries were filled with a hope that felt like a punch to the gut. June 12, 1953. We are finally here. Arthur and I have moved into our forever home. It is everything I ever wanted. The old Victorian on the hill. Arthur says it's a good omen our name is Blackwood. 2. The house has such wonderful bones. I feel a sense of peace here I haven't felt in years. This is our beginning. Her words mirrored our own dream. I felt a strange kinship with this woman from 70 years ago. I flipped through the pages. She wrote about her rose garden, the morning sun in the kitchen, her husband's promotion. It was idyllic. And then the tone started to change. July 28, 1953. A peculiar thing happened. I was sewing when I heard a faint scratching sound from upstairs. Arthur found nothing. He says the house is just old, that it has its own language. I suppose he is right. But the chill in the upper hallway seems to have deepened. Sometimes the cold feels less like a draft and more like a presence. A stillness. I have started calling it the stillness. It is a heavy, watching cold. My blood ran cold. The stillness. It was the perfect word for it. August 19, 1953. The invitations for our housewarming party went unanswered. Not a single one. When I see Mrs. Gable at the market, her eyes are guarded. She asked how we were getting on the house, with an emphasis on house that I did not like. The people here are afraid of this place. They whisper about the man who built it, a distant ancestor of Arthur's, Silas Blackwood. They say he was eccentric. The parallels were chilling. The isolation, the whispers. Just then, I heard a soft cling from the kitchen. I froze. Anna was a heavy sleeper. It wasn't her. I told myself it was just the house settling, using the same tired excuse Evelyn's husband had. Her neat script grew more hurried. September 5th, 1953. I can no longer deny it. This house is not right. The scratching is nightly now. It comes from the walls of my study. Last night, I saw a shadow move in the hallway. I am not mad. I tried to talk to Arthur, but he grew angry. He refuses to see it. So I spoke to Mr. Abernathy at the post office. He told me things. Stories. He said Silas Blackwood wasn't just eccentric. He was a recluse who dabbled in spiritualism. He believed houses could be more than brick and mortar. He believed they could be made into vessels, conduits for listening to the other side. Mr. Abernathy said Silas simply vanished one day from inside the house. A vessel, a conduit. I scrambled back to the office, grabbed the second journal, and flipped through until I found the entry that made me drop the book on the floor. October 31st, 1953. I found something terrible. In the cellar. I was tapping on the stone foundation of the great fireplace, just as Mr. Abernathy hinted I should. One of the stones was loose. Behind it, carved into mortar, was a symbol, a sigil, a spiraling eye. The moment my fingers brushed against it, the cold, it wasn't a chill anymore. It was a physical force. It felt like a malevolent intelligence. Fully awake now, and it knows that I know. It knows I have found its heart. I didn't even think. Anna, sleep, the rational world. It all just faded. The journal was a map, and I had to follow it. I grabbed my phone and went to the cellar. The door creaked open, revealing steep stone steps leading into pure blackness. The air that rose up was frigid and smelled of damp earth and something faintly metallic, like old blood. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back. But Evelyn's words pulled me forward. It knows I have found its heart. The cellar was a labyrinth of stone archways. In the center stood the massive base of the main chimney. I ran my flashlight over its surface, my breath misting in the freezing air. I started knocking on the stones. Then I found it, a stone near the floor, slightly darker than the others. I knocked, a hollow thump, the same sound from the office wall. I wedged my fingers into the crack and pulled. The stone grated, then crashed to the floor with a deafening boom. And there it was, exactly as Evelyn described. A spiraling, hypnotic eye etched deep into the mortar. It seemed to pulse, to draw the light into its depths. I reached out, and the cold that radiated from it was so profound it was like a physical blow. The moment my brain processed it, the house above me exploded into chaos. A deafening bang, like every door slamming shut at once. Then the scratching. It was everywhere. A vicious, frantic clawing from every wall, the ceiling, the floor. The house was alive, and it was screaming. The single bare bulb in the cellar flickered and died. The cold intensified, and with it came a new sound, a low, guttural breathing that seemed to be right beside my ear. Pure panic took over. I scrambled backwards, tripped, and fled up the stairs, slamming the cellar door and fumbling the bolt shut. I raced back to the living room and grabbed the last journal. The handwriting inside was a wild, jagged scrawl. I found the final entry. November 7th, 1953. It is the house. It has always been the house. Silas didn't want to talk to spirits. He wanted to become one with this place. He fed it, made it aware. The scratching is its voice. The cold is its breath. It doesn't want to haunt. It wants to inhabit. It feeds on life, on fear, on memory. It sleeps until someone new comes. Someone who can feel it, listen to it. The hidden space where I will leave these books, it is a lure. He knew someone would find them, just as I did, just as you have. Reading these words, feeling my fear, you are feeding it, giving it strength. These journals are not a warning. They are the key that unlocks the cage. Evelyn's last sentence was in huge block letters, taking up the rest of the page. It knows I'm writing this. It knows you're reading it. You have woken it up. The only way to keep it from taking you is to keep the story going. Don't stop. The words blurred. Don't stop. It wasn't a plea. It was a command. A curse. The journals weren't a history. They were a trap. Evelyn wasn't leaving a warning for the next poor soul. She was passing a baton in a relay race from hell. Her story, her fear, had fed the house just enough to keep it from consuming her. And now it was my turn. Then the scratching stopped. All at once. The sudden, absolute silence was more terrifying than the noise. The house was holding its breath, waiting for me to decide what to do next. What was the alternative? Stop telling the story? What would happen then? Would the house, starved of fear it craves, finally take what it wants in a more final way? I looked at the pen and blank notebook on the side table. My own journal. The thought was insane, but it lodged in my mind with terrifying certainty. The script I'm reading now, this story I'm telling you, this is my journal. This is how I keep the story going. Upstairs, Anna called my name, her voice thick with sleep. What was that noise? Is everything okay? How could I answer her? How could I explain that in my arrogant search for answers, I condemned us, that I had woken something ancient and hungry, and our only hope for survival was to become its storyteller, feeding it our terror to keep it from devouring us whole? The chill is always here now. It's a permanent resident. We hear the scratching every night. Sometimes it's faint, distant. Other times it's a frantic clawing right behind our heads. Sometimes in the dead of night. I swear I can hear writing from the other side of the wall, the faint, dry scratch of a nib on paper. We never found out what happened to Evelyn Blackwood. Her story just stops. Maybe she finally stopped writing. The real estate agent never mentioned the house's quirks. They never mentioned Evelyn. And they certainly never told us that the town's silence was a form of quarantine. We bought the house, but we're not the owners. We're just a current chapter in a story that never ends. We are the ink that fills its pages. And we are so afraid of running out. Have you ever felt like your house has a memory? Let me know in the comments. And if you're ever house hunting and you feel that strange, inexplicable chill, don't just dismiss it. Keep driving.